Welcome to Popcorn Psychology, the podcast where we watch blockbuster movies and psychoanalyze them. My name is Brittany Brownfield, and I'm a child therapist, and I'm joined by
Ben Stover, individual therapist.
Hannah Espinoza, marriage and family therapist.
We're all licensed clinical professional counselors, also known as therapists, who practice out of Chicago. Even though we are licensed mental health professionals, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes and to fulfill our love of dissecting pop culture in all forms.
Please remember that even though we are all licensed therapists, we aren't your therapist.
If you are struggling with mental health symptoms, please find a local mental health provider.
Welcome to holiday season 2023. In today's episode, we will be doing a movie that one of us had not seen ever, and two of us had probably not seen since we were 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And as we rewatched it today, we realized we may have made a horrible choice, and I'm sorry.
And whose fault is that?
It is mine.
Exactly.
I am Reek. It's my fault.
Ben's been wanting us to do Jingle All The Way
for 2 years.
That's accurate.
For 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there would be lots of interesting things for us to talk about like a family having to go through looking at a dad who's overworking and how to kind of manage the erosion of trust and the damaging of relationships. And what I forgot is that this movie is garbage.
Yeah, basically, if you want to hear about the things Ben just brought up, listen to our episode on Hook from last Christmas season.
Or Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes. Two Robin Williams classics.
What we got out of this was none of that.
It's a Schwarzenegger feast.
That he made $20.2 million on.
What an asshole.
Well, I mean, the prime of his career, pretty much.
I mean,
the
whatever.
90s.
This is mid-90s. This is the start of the decline, probably, where it took, I think, End of Days to bounce back from this one, or maybe some bad Terminator sequels. Mm-hmm. Oof. So this movie is supposed to be Schwarzenegger near the prime of his career, and it is, I think, the start of the decline. Ultimately, it is a Christmas stinker. It was tonally a mess. The jokes fell flat in a lot of places, and as we prepare to look at the family relationships in this film, oof. So what we'll start with is the plot summary. So what happens here is that a mattress sales king of Minnesota in this film
natural fit.
Yikes.
A natural fit is a total workaholic, and we're seeing right from the get-go that he is missing a lot of things that his kid is doing. His kid lets us know right off the bat that he is never there. He is always missing things, and the disappointment is getting quite raw, and the family is getting very angry with him and starting to just count him out of stuff. As we go through the course of this film, we see that his little boy is obsessed with a very Power Rangers-esque show called Turbo Man. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
needs it.
He needs it because Dad won't show up. So he needs a strong-jawed gentleman in his life to provide fatherly guidance, since he doesn't get that from Dad. We see the family erosion start to take place, and Dad thinks that if he makes a promise to his son that he'll just get him something special for Christmas, maybe something that Santa, ironically, is too busy this time of year to guarantee he can get.
It was the same year that Tim Allen bonked Santa off of a roof?
No, 2 years later.
Oh.
I also watched that this weekend. That was much better.
Sure.
The sequels were not.
I'll tell you this right now. This movie is so bad. Buckle up, everybody. This movie is so bad that it made me grateful that I'm child-free. You know what I mean? I mean, I choose to be child-free, but this movie is so bad that I will continue to be child-free. So I don't have to subject myself to these kind of movies.
So anywho, in the the realm of the Power Ranger toys and the Cabbage Patch Kids not being available, the movie takes off from there, where Howard goes on an impossible quest to bring his child this present that he promised Santa Claus might even be too busy to get, but I, who never shows up, can in fact get it for you to make up for all my shortcomings as a crappy dad. Yeah. Which he then fails to do because they've been sold out for months. So much so that even So in this travesty of a movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, native Minnesotan,
Mattress king of Minneapolis.
the king of Minneapolis mattress sales, who is inauspiciously sporting an Austrian accent
Yep, nothing to see here, y'all.
that nobody talks about, is too busy selling mattresses to ever be present for his kid. And we start to see a family breaking apart because he is always at work pursuing the American dream of always being able to provide enough money to buy your kids all the toys that they want, except for Turbo Man, which has been sold out for months. And Arnold misses his kid's karate promotion and then makes a promise he has no idea he can't fulfill and goes on a merry adventure trying desperately to bring home this Turbo Man toy for his son, and gets into a conflict with Myron, as played by Sinbad, as both fathers who just can't get it together, and they go on this ridiculous adventure that results in them becoming the hero and the villain, Turbo Man, and whatever this villain's name is.
Yeah. Brain in a jar?
Brain in a jar. Brain in a jar.
Mega mind?
There's no consequences for anyone despite committing numerous felonies on the way, except for Sinbad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, considering he's the only prominent character of color in the whole entire movie.
Correct.
Yep.
And never mind that they commit near equal felonies. He smiles, and as Arnold gets to be anointed a hero by his child, and he gets hauled off to jail,
Yeah.
able to give his child the toy. This movie was bad.
This movie is pretty bad, guys.
This movie is bad. It's bad. It's not good. Nobody liked it. And I'm annoyed that we have to talk about
Hannah
it.
was the only one who's never seen it.
So,
You're welcome.
yeah.
So as we discuss this movie, we're going to be kind of looking at the themes that will be explained to you by our very own Brittany Brownfield.
Well, in this movie, we're going to be talking about dads who can't quite get their shit together. In this movie, we have two fathers who, instead of acknowledging that they are not showing up in their kids' lives in a way that is actually positive and parenting, they spend all their energy on a Christmas Eve that lasts, I don't know, 24 to 48 hours
At least.
in the daylight. This movie is stuck also in an alternate dimension where it does not go dark after hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. But anywho, yeah, I mean, I think this movie is just a prominent display of two dads, specifically Arnold, I can focus on him, who has no clue about how to actually be an active parent in his kid's life. And rather than acknowledge that fact and the fact that he's continuously disappointing his kid, Jamie, he instead will just put himself in repeated peril, both literal, legal, etc., rather than acknowledge how he is truly letting his kid down. This Turbo Man becomes a symbol of him making it up to his kid or not being a dickbag. Like, I just kept thinking, if both these dudes could just acknowledge where they are disappointing their children, they wouldn't have to do this. It makes me think of, when I work with clients in real life, how they will get really stuck on an objective or they can't let go of something. Like, I need to do this. I need to have this milestone. I need to get this thing, right? And it becomes like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but just they can't get off of it. And it becomes more of like, what are you trying to achieve? What does this actually mean? What is this goal a symbol of? And why does it feel so hard to let it go? And I think this movie is a case of these two guys who can't let go of this idea of finding Turbo Man. Because then what does that mean? They can't fix the problem that is their relationship with their kids.
They cannot, because they are very much stuck in this idea that I can fix it. And they have no concept whatsoever of what it would take to actually fix it.
Yeah, because I'll tell you this right now. In the opening scene of this movie, when Arnold is on the telephone to all of his customers that he loves, he does not seem like a man who is wrecked by his life. What I mean by that is he seems quite happy, actually. He seems like jolly as shit. He
really
doesn't seem
does.
to be torn up
He
about
really
the fact that
does.
he's missing his kid's thing. He doesn't even seem torn up after he's missed it.
He got torn up.
But I think it goes very quickly to, well, how can I fix it? Let's make joke. He doesn't seem like a guy who is really acknowledging the problem.
He doesn't seem like somebody who has awareness
Yeah.
at all that this is that a kid.
A real problem.
Yeah, that this is an actual problem with a human. I think he writes off his kid very easily as not having enough importance in some ways to warrant a serious, thoughtful conversation. And either old boy can't do it in general because he has, you know, the intelligence of an ant, or he doesn't think it's that important. Like, he doesn't think that kids can feel big feelings.
I don't know if I agree with those.
Too bad.
Well, I mean, that's the impetus of the entire movie, is that he knows that the kid has the big feelings and he doesn't want his kid to be hurt.
But
he
I think it's
can't-
about him.
But it's all about him.
It's definitely about him and him facing consequences, but the consequences he's afraid of are his kid having the big feelings.
Sure.
Though what we see is his inability to take responsibility to make the changes that would work.
I
Yeah.
don't think he's that thoughtful.
No, that I agree on.
Yeah, I don't think he has the best emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But just probably the fault of the movie and its horrible writing than
Sure.
the actual person we're discussing,
Sure.
the character itself. Because, well, one, yeah, the way that I'll say this, the scene where he misses the karate and then the kid's pissed at him and then he goes into his room and is trying to joke around to like win him over, it did make me curious, and I'm giving this movie way too much credit than it deserves.
Yep.
It did make me curious if that was like Arnold's role as a kid in his family. Like, was he the peacekeeper / like class clown, the person in the family who's more the jokester who breaks the tension, and that's like his coping strategy, his go-to move when there is tension in a family dynamic? That seemed like his go-to move, but I was pleasantly surprised that he quickly went to apologizing. I really felt like he was going to be that guy who just tries to lighten the mood and doesn't even say I'm sorry to his kid. So at least there was that. I mean, I could give him a little shred that he did apologize. But,
I think it took too long.
well, it took too long for sure. Apologizing should have been the first thing he did.
Yeah.
Not this long jokey thing where he only apologizes because my kid's not playing my game with me.
Yeah.
And I think his kid's probably getting old enough now where the kid is holding on more to these moments when he's being disappointed, that he can't joke with him anymore. He's not a little kid anymore, where he has like a shorter attention span and you can kind of keep it moving. The kid is now retaining patterns of behavior and holding on to hurt feelings in a way that is just developmentally what's going to happen. And it's going to make it harder for Howard to fall back on old behaviors, that he's going to have to rise to the occasion or not. And then the kid's going to have a estranged relationship with you. Well, we already see this kid who's pretty young already writing his dad off, like you were saying, Hannah. I think like he's already saying in the very beginning of this movie he misses everything. This is a kid that's already giving up on his father in like second grade. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a dad that needs to start doing his own growing up, or his kid's going to grow up past him pretty quickly.
Yeah, he's gonna find out really fast that what kids depend on adults for is stability and consistency of their needs being met. And that doesn't only include their material needs. It includes their emotional needs.
Yeah.
It includes their needs for comfort, their needs for belonging, their needs for approval. And you can't give those things remotely. You can't give those things in absentia. And you can't give those things by buying someone a present because they got their purple belt.
Yeah.
What the filmmakers did do a great job of is showing, as little Jake Lloyd's character broke that box to get that purple belt, he looked back
Yeah.
to see where his dad was.
Yeah.
And dad didn't even have enough brain to sit down with the kid and say, immediately upon walking in, let's watch your video. Show me your belt.
That's true. He didn't even really ask him about it.
Nope.
I think he put it on his head to be, but that was part of his ploy to like win him over.
But also, I thought it was very disrespectful.
That's also a good point.
Like a kid, this kid is learning something about being, there's just so many parts of being in karate that I think are more irreverent. And him coming in and just putting it around his head like it's no big deal, I think really made it seem like it's not a big deal that you got this. And I don't know, and again, because his character has no awareness and no intelligence at all. He doesn't see that. That really rubbed me the wrong way when the dad put it on his head, because I was like, this kid has been working hard. This kid is been following all of the different directions and information that he's getting in order to get up to this point where he gets this belt. He has to do something in order to get it in front of everyone.
Yeah, it's very meaningful.
It's very meaningful. And I think that's how karate is taught to be that way. Yeah. And so that's the whole fucking point. And so the fact that the dad is just like, oh, now I have one.
You didn't earn that.
You didn't earn it. And you couldn't even take 10 fucking minutes. Or even, I think the other thing that bothers me the most about Arnold's character is that he's never honest with his son. He's never honest. He doesn't say, he promises things. Don't fucking promise shit if you can't do it. Don't even promise the smallest, stupidest thing you can think of, because life happens. And it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. So the fact that he also promises him stuff so often, that would be the reason why a kid would be like writing his dad off already, because he can't be honest with him about anything.
Yeah.
He can't even be like, hey, I really want to go to that parade. I'm really excited. I can tell that you're excited, but I have this thing that I have to get done today, and I just don't know how long it's going to take.
And that's what's also really sad, is a way that he could very easily have made it up to his kid is saying, I'm so sorry that I didn't make it to your karate thing, your karate promotion. Tomorrow, I will make sure that we're together all day. I'll make you breakfast. We'll go to the parade. I will be with you together.
And offer a reason why you were not.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And be careful that it doesn't sound like an excuse, just kind of saying like, which he kind of says like, I messed up, and I think that's worthwhile of acknowledging, like not even a good reason. Like I blew it. I thought I could make it there in time. And I didn't, and I should have left earlier, and I'm really, really sorry. And yeah, let's watch the tape of you getting your belt, and tomorrow we will spend all day together. Right. Instead, I chase down a toy that you won't care about in a year and spend none of the day with you. And continue this narrative that I'm not going to be around. There's always going to be something more important than you. But don't worry, because Ted will be around. And he'll be a great stepdad.
Yikes.
Right? If he doesn't murder your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. He might be a little busy at nighttime serial killing, but
slippery.
He'll be around he'll get you a reindeer, babe, and he'll make sure to do the tree with you. He'll never miss a karate promotion. Because where is he going to meet his next
victim?
His next victim.
Right? The way that karate is featured in it, I think, Hannah, you triggered my mind that's a really good point, is karate's also all about discipline.
Yes.
And honor.
That's the words I couldn't think of. Yes.
And looking at how much inconsistency there is between what he's learning and being shown as important by a discipline and an art form that he's clearly invested in versus what he's being shown from his father.
Exactly.
He's going to start to pick up on. And he's going to lose respect for his dad.
Yeah.
Because his dad is not there. His dad does not tell the truth. His dad is not an honorable person. That his dad cares about money.
Yeah. Or his dad will just become someone, which is kind of the same idea, but this dad will just become someone that he can ask things of, like big gifts. Dad will just become like a big piggy bank to him, right? I've worked with families where that unfortunately has been the pattern. And it becomes really bad really quickly, because then also you can, if your kid ends up having like behavioral issues, which is very easy to understand, if they have a parent that they feel neglected by, then it becomes this bribery situation where your kid will only behave. not even necessarily that your kid will behave if you have big gestures, but also it becomes a thing where they spoil with expensive stuff because they can't sit in the discomfort of parenting better than that. And then it becomes this thing where the kid never learns how to like sit in the discomfort of not getting what they want right away. It can just develop into a really poisonous dynamic very quickly, where you also can have a kid who gets really caught up in like materialism and extrinsic motivation. It can just get really sloppy really quickly and become a real problem later on that you have to then retroactively figure out by coming to see somebody like me who has to say, hey, your kid should be able to handle not getting to go to that concert or whatever. And if they can't, that's indicative of a bigger issue. Mm-hmm. And also, have you created a dynamic where you're with your kid where you don't show up for them day to day because you give them the splashy shit, and that's become the understood dynamic? Because like you were saying, Ben, kids don't care about big gestures like this in terms of feeling valued by their parents, feeling connected to their parents, feeling important to their parents. Because him looking back at the karate thing, why that's really meaningful, showing up to kids' events, is because that's what shows them that you value them, that they are important to you, that you're prioritizing your time and your energy to get there and be with them. Kids respond very much to being with them. And even with buying toys for your kids and stuff like that, kids really enjoy you doing that with them. We got this fancy Lego set and we do it together.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? We go on this vacation together. We go to this concert together. But not just, I'm giving you this toy so I don't have to deal with you. Or I'm giving you this toy that replaces me being with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And kids don't want that. They want to be with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Kids can accept a toy as a gesture if the apology also comes with a behavior correction. Mm-hmm. But if you start creating the mindset that I'm going to buy you this toy so I can continue being an absentee part of your life that you can't rely on, then we're going to have problems.
Yeah.
And I think where this movie highlighted poorly.
Well, there's no lesson in this
things.
movie.
Not for the dad, there isn't.
Yeah.
Or for anyone, but I think Howard missed an opportunity to tell Jamie that he was important to him and buy the toy he knew the kid liked. He knew he sees him watching Turbo Man every day. Mm-hmm. You would think anybody who was tuned in would have some awareness that Turbo Man might be hard to get.
Yeah.
And if your kid is telling you that, I don't know what he said, like everybody who doesn't have one, all my friends are getting one, anybody who doesn't have one is going to be a jerk, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is something parents need to parent on. And if your dad has been trading a lot of time to be a way to make money and then you don't deliver the thing,
What's the return on investment here?
what's the return on investment? And not that you want to train the kid to think that the return on investment for overworking is that you get to have the toy you really want. Mm-hmm. But you do need to draw some lines to some of this work that I do, this time that I can't be with you, is to get you and your mom and our family things that we need. That doesn't have to be said toy, but there needs to be a conversation around, I am away a lot with work, because some parents have to do that, and it doesn't make them bad parents. I'm away a lot in order to provide for us. Mm-hmm. But there is more to this world than this toy. And if you, like, I'm unable to get you this toy, that doesn't make you any less valuable. Yeah. And that's the kind of parenting that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. Having remembered being a kid, there will be some asshole who will tell you, oh, I got this toy, blah, 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 that you didn't get, blah, 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 blah. And that some toy or thing that you didn't get from your parents that you most certainly still resented because you had totally built up in your head some Christmas that you were totally going to get that toy and you bought it for yourself as an adult. Mm-hmm. The things that I want to just make sure we're getting to these kids as we talk to them, don't miss the opportunity to parent them that your worth doesn't come from things that you have. The word comes from things that you are and do, and if the dad's not modeling that, and echoing it in the parenting message is going to fall flat.
I have a distinct memory of my mother having this conversation with me as a kid, where I remember going to her in like 5th grade and bitching that I didn't have like Guess jeans, which I think were the hot thing at the time. And my mom very much says is, you can get Guess jeans. I'll have to work for those jeans. So do you want to have me less? And I was like, oh, no. I do like you being around a lot. And so she drew that comparison for me very early, and it obviously stayed with me, of this, like, I could have had fancier stuff as a kid. And the reason why I didn't is because my mom worked either not at all or worked part-time. So my mom very early instilled this idea of what you're talking about, which is that it's the reason why we don't have that stuff is because we've prioritized spending time with you and raising you and your siblings. And I was like, message received, and I apologize. I think you make a good point in how clocked out Howard is to the family, because even as a salesman, a person who seems to be, if nothing else, really up on sales and what's going on in the economy, he isn't aware of what the hottest toy of the season is. From like even like commercial perspective, he's not aware of like what's going on business wise right now in the world of retail. And I know it's very different than mattresses, but I think he's not even good at like being aware of that part of it. On top of the fact that he's really clocked out of this thing that not only has his kid probably been talking about nonstop for weeks, if not months, but also that his wife has very pointedly asked him to get weeks before. So he's not listening to his wife or his kid.
Well, he's lying to her. He's like, yeah, I totally got it.
But yeah, but he doesn't remember that conversation, I'm sure.
I don't know if he does or not.
The look on his face was like, we talked about that?
Right.
So he didn't retain that. He feels like the kind of guy who shows up, smile Magoo, you know what I mean? Just chopping it up at home, but isn't really paying attention to the things that matter. You know, that very sitcom-y yuckles thing where like a guy can just be like a goof, a buffoon, weaponize incompetence, bro, at home.
Right.
And that's totally okay, and your wife will have no problems with that. And if she does, it's because she's a bitch nag.
And I feel like the 90s, which this is very much in the midst of, that was the trope. That was the messaging. And I think that was maybe even the mentality of a lot of parents. And I think this movie echoed a lot of that for people that were alive during that time period of going like, ooh, too close.
And also, too, which I know is just this because this movie sucks, is the fact that going in line with what we're talking about, the end of this movie should have been, I don't care about the toy dad. I just wanted to be with you. I'm upset that we weren't together today. You know what I mean? And Arnold learning that lesson. Instead of this kid being like, I just love that my dad's Turbo Man, and that was really fun and wild, and I'm going to give this toy away. If we're going off of what you just brought up, Ben, this kid should be hyper attached to this toy.
Yeah.
Because it's all he got. What is the impetus for him to then give the toy away?
Bad writing?
If this is like what he's being, the morals that he's being encouraged to hold as Howard's son. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a very cutesy, schmaltzy ending where no one gets held accountable for anything they've done, except for the black guy, Sinbad.
Does anybody want to say anything else about the dad? It seems like we're sort of like winding down on the parenthood relationships and...
I'm sure it'll come up as we're talking about these other things.
Well, it's all interconnected because it's basically dad is a character and everyone else is flat.
Yeah,
Barely.
pretty much. Yeah.
All right. So
But yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Let's take our first break here and maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of our other characters.
Well, what I was saying is that his wife doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
No, she makes no sense.
The fact that I can't get over the fact that he literally was in a rocket pack way up skyscrapers, so far from Earth. He gets their kid in his arms, also so far from Earth. And when the kid comes down to the ground, the mom just couldn't be more casual.
Yeah.
Oh, come here. What's going on? I'm just like, you should be screaming, crying, throwing up, cursing at Arnold, who you think is just some guy.
Yeah.
And maybe even hurting him physically, like attacking him. The fact that she has such a low-key response, it seems to just go back to this continued narrative where, if we're going to get really stereotypical, she's like a cool girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What really struck me, though, about Rita Wilson's character, does she have a name?
She did.
I'm sure she does. I can't recall it.
I didn't write
at
it
all.
down. I usually write down all the
Liz.
characters' names.
Oh, because Ted calls her Lizzie, and it
Lizzie.
made me want to barf in my mouth. Anyway,
I think that's the only time they say the name.
yeah, it's the only time I recall it either. I mean, this movie rewards that stereotype, like almost like the cool girl dynamic, where even though she is frustrated by Howard, tells him so very politely, in my opinion, she does not get that upset about anything. I don't know if she's on Quaaludes, like old school style or whatever. But the fact that she's not more panicked at the end, the fact that he actually gets rewarded for the Turbo Man thing because she's horny, question mark, by his outfit as Turbo Man and the rocket pack doing stuff. It's the wildest ending in all of cinema. And I saw Saltburn yesterday in theaters, okay? It was just a crazy movie. This movie just encourages these stereotypes that, yeah, she's a character with no depth. That would have also been another opportunity for Arnold's character to learn, to grow, where she holds him accountable. You know, the only thing she really does that bristles him, that is kind of a consequence, is she lets Ted step into his role that day. But that's just a natural consequence, I think, of Arnold not being around. That, like, there is a person there who is willing to drive them, who is going to help her decorate the tree, you know, who's a neighbor, right? And she seems to not think it's nefarious because she gets a little like, what? When he hits on her, Ted. So other than that, like, she's actually being very cool, in my opinion, about what's going on, which is a bummer because it's another way in which Arnold's characters just continue to not grow.
Yeah.
We're seeing so many things happen that are just not realistic.
No, yeah, for sure.
Nothing is tonally consistent at all. No behaviors are consistent. Like you see, I think this is the impact of this movie was done very short order production. It was crammed into the production schedule and they just kind of blitzed through it. And I think multiple writers had cracks at it and none of them tonal consistency. Because you see like moments where mom is starting to lose her patience with dad. And then all of a sudden, oh, he looks hot. Like she wasn't aware that he's been working out.
Well, this
Like
movie's
forever?
just cowardly. It pulls all its punches, except for the ones that it should pull.
Yeah, for laughs that don't land.
That don't land. Like it doesn't make any sense. And I think, I mean, clearly this movie was very poorly written. And I think what also sucks is that he has a mother who doesn't seem to have a backbone or a brain. And that is so unhelpful in a situation. It's almost like he's being neglected by both parents.
Yeah.
Like when you have a parent who doesn't know that he's lying about not getting the toy, who like doesn't know him well enough, doesn't know Howard's character well enough to know that he's lying about not having the toy. Like even that in and of itself, that conversation just felt so flat and so not realistic. They did such a bad job with this movie that all of the interactions in the family are so disconnected from each other.
They feel fake.
They do feel fake. It feels very fake, and Arnold does not help with that at all.
He's hamming it the fuck up.
Ugh.
Like that, the whole conversation after he promises the toy and they're winding down to go to bed, and she so easily eats up what he's saying.
Yes.
And he couldn't look like a bigger liar. He is trying to be a comedic actor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, in this movie, and could not be telegraphing more insanely every thought that's going on or not going on in that big old head. And in that moment when she is like, you got it though, right? And he's like, yeah, of course I got it. But he does it in the most vaudevillian way you could. And the way that she's like, great, I knew it, is so wild, especially with something like this where she knows that it's her son's favorite toy or favorite thing, where like his whole Christmas is probably hinging upon having this toy.
I would even say that if anything about this was realistic, she wouldn't have entrusted him with that task at all.
That's for goddamn sure. Or she would be asking him every day, did you get it? Did you get it? I want to see it. The fact that she hasn't touched it with her hands and gift wrapped it herself, because you know he ain't wrapping gifts for
Fuck
Christmas.
no. Fuck no.
The fact that she
Absolutely
hasn't
not.
seen it and it's the day before Christmas Eve, and she just thinks it's around, and then she
Yeah.
believes that it's at his office.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. Especially a mom who's gotten used to picking up after him
Yes.
with their kid. No, you're exactly right. So then it's like she's checked out. Like
Yeah.
if I'm going to go off of this movie as if she's a real person,
Sure.
you're right. She is checked out. She doesn't really want to acknowledge what's not working either.
Right.
And she just keeps giving her husband a pass at the detriment of her child, who will be the one having the actual emotional consequences of the situation.
Which also does not strike me as real or consistent with the character we see on screen. This mom is very plugged in with Jamie. There is no universe where she would let him fail Jamie that bad. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't even
Yeah.
make sense for how she's written or acted, except that nothing apparently is consistent about how she was coached, because she seems to lose her brain or have one depending on which shot it is,
Yeah.
which is confusing because, like, we see her from buying none of his shit to buying all of it very quickly.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And any person that's ever seen a mother with their only child knows that there is one thing that is for damn sure not happening in most situations. That dad that is known to be failing that kid, that she's doing it. Or vice versa, right? Sometimes it's both.
Yeah.
Sometimes very much it's both. Sometimes we get two parents that aren't great at being parents. That happens. But the way this mom is written is not that.
Yeah, she's supposed to be like the warm suburban mom who has a dummy husband. When he unveils himself to be Turbo Man at the end, I can understand her not going absolutely apeshit like a stranger. But when he took that helmet off, if I was her, once I saw that it was my actual husband, the father of my child who pulled that shit, you'll have to put me in handcuffs next to Sinbad in the back of that police car because I'll fucking kill him. Like I would lose it.
Absolutely.
This is what you've been doing all day? And then you just did that. You just endangered our child's life and your life, bro.
Well, and she knows he has not been clever. Writing may have been a different story where
Yeah.
he even lied and said, yeah, I've actually been secretly training
Like
to be
planning
in this
this?
show. I planned this. Like, even more clever writing would have been that, but there's just no lessons learned anywhere for any bad behavior. It's just, oh, it's all cool because you got the toy.
I mean, it's not even like that. All cool because you got the toy, and also wink, wink. You're gonna get lucky later. Like that's the energy.
Yes. Very
Coming
much
off
of
of
the
her.
ending. Very
Right.
much.
And where her brain comes in and out. Because, like you were saying, she's freaking out and going, my child has not been trained to be in any show. He's not acting. She's telling a police officer her child's in danger, and then she just like stops.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. Even from an adrenaline perspective,
It's complete nonsense.
she shouldn't be so calm.
No.
Her calmness at the end in that end scene is so. Everyone got trank darted before every scene.
She was more upset that Ted called her Lizzie than her child is dangling
true.
from a Christmas tree
Yeah.
above the main parade route in downtown Minneapolis.
That's a great point, because when Ted hits on her and makes it very apparent what his motivations are, she does show an aggressive side, an appropriately aggressive side. Like she gets very quote unquote feisty with him,
Well, yeah, she realized Ted isn't the benign neighbor next door. He's a
which also
creep.
any woman
Yes.
who has any sense of self-safety and awareness would know what was happening with Ted, because she's sitting next to him when all these other women, and she's rolling her eyes too, when all these other women are like, you want to come fix my pipes, Ted? Hey, Ted, I've got something in my bedroom for you to hook up. You know what I mean? She's around him when he's acting like, in my opinion, a sleaze.
Absolutely.
And the fact that she doesn't get that he's a sleaze, she is written as the dumbest woman that has walked the earth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then to be, I don't know. It's just, we're trying to make sense of something that's not going to be made sense of.
No, it's bad writing.
And it makes me really curious because Rita Wilson is a decent actor. I love her in a lot of other things.
Absolutely.
And she was delivering this energy, like we were saying, like in the car scene with Ted. So it makes me really curious, like, what was the direction given to her
Yeah.
during the scene at the end when Jamie is rescued, right? And comes back to her. How was the director like, no, play it less. No, play it less. Play it less. But also look a little horny. Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Put it, wrap it. We got what we needed.
Yeah, I wonder if they just shot this so out of sequence
Oh.
that...
Or with no context to like certain scenes.
Or something. Like, I don't know how much...
Especially if it was so badly written that they maybe had to do a lot of rewriting.
Ooh, or reshoots, yeah.
Or reshoots where like this was the first scene they shot or something bonkers, which I know they do sometimes.
Yeah, well, it wasn't with this one. They did a bunch of stuff in Minneapolis, and then they shot a lot of this in LA, where they would have had access to probably a little bit more safety stuff to do the bananas.
Shit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because just doing that outside of Mall of America, they're like, no, we're going to make more money in an hour than this movie's going to make. So, no, you're not, in fact, shutting down our operations.
Yeah.
Because this is the 90s, people went to malls.
Yes.
But looking at how bananas and disjointed this acting was and how unrealistically they portrayed the mom character, who they tried so hard to make so many things that she ended up being none of them.
Yeah. You know how Vin Diesel, maybe you don't know this, Vin Diesel has a rule in his Fast and the Furious movies that he can't lose a fight. Isn't that funny? Anyway, where I'm going with that is it almost makes me wonder if like Arnold Schwarzenegger had a role in this movie who was like, my wife can't ever really be that mad at me. And I have to win her over no matter what.
Yeah.
Like I can't be seen as having a wife that's dissatisfied with me.
Or something bonkers.
Yeah, like it's very weird how it won't go there, the movie, at all.
Yeah.
Because a lot of movies go there. A lot of kid movies even will go there.
Even the fact that Jamie is allowed to be mad at him.
Yeah.
He's allowed to be more mad than the mom is allowed to be mad.
That kid has he's the best actor in this movie.
Oh, by far.
Yep.
Like he has the most emotional depth. He's allowed to have the most emotional depth in this movie. He's the one who's allowed to have an arc. But, well, I don't even know, because the arc is that I still love my dad no matter what. You know what I mean?
And I'm the goodness that is Christmas, that kids don't actually need the gift and they'll give it away if there's something better, even if they wanted it so bad when they see that they get the thing that they wanted most.
So because he's
we
like,
couldn't even deliver that message, because the message could have been exactly what we were saying before is, I don't need that. I just needed you.
Yeah.
And I don't need the toy. I just needed my dad.
Yeah, him saying, I don't need Turbo Man because I have Turbo Man at home because my dad is Turbo Man. Yeah, but you're not going to play with your dad. Mm-hmm. So that Turbo Man is pointless because it's a Turbo Man you can't play with. Instead of, like I said, like it's so weird that this movie doesn't end with, I didn't really need that toy, Dad. I just want to spend time with you. That's a corny ending we've seen a lot of times before, but that's an ending that makes sense and doesn't just let Arnold off the hook. Like I'm saying, this movie, it really wants to idealize Howard, Arnold's character, in a way that is so weird. He really can't lose. He can't lose, no matter what. Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
So I think that seems to be all we're got on them.
I think it's all we can give it.
I mean,
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we take another break here.
So supposedly, according to the internet and Ben, this movie is
Who
supposed
got it from the internet?
Who got it from the internet?
I do not know personally what Chris Columbus's rewrites were.
This movie is supposed to be a satire, which we're playing fast and loose with what a satire is. Anyway, and it's supposed to be a satire of American over-consumerism, especially during Christmas, because this is like just serendipitously, this movie came out a month before the Christmas of Tickle Me Elmo. Like probably when that was actually peaking, this movie came out. Mm-hmm. So it just happened to come out during a time when we had like one of the wildest specific toy that everyone wanted and couldn't seem to get their hands on. And I think the only time that this movie seems to do the satire part well, where I genuinely laughed, is when everyone is being thrown Looney Tune style into shelves and wrestling each other.
Wonderful Christmas time.
Oh, the most wonderful time of year.
Yeah, that's
it's the most wonderful time of year.
Which is a scene that our friend who gave us a lot of good podcast advice, Mr. Rob Southgate, is in as one of the people distributing the ping pong balls or bouncy balls that nobody addressed a child put in her mouth.
I know, that's right. I thought the same thing. I was like, what?
I was like, Hannah, is the whole point of this movie from a writing perspective is let's see how many tiny things we can get Arnold Schwarzenegger to move his big body through.
Right.
Which that seemed to be the whole purpose of that situation, is to get him in that little kid playground area.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the time of comedy, a fat guy in a little coat.
Yeah.
So
that's true. And so
got to capitalize on that. We can't have new ideas. Big guy, little tube. That's it. Yeah. Funny.
And so I can understand, I guess it is an interesting psychological topic of...
I'm sorry. I am really resisting the urge to like Norm Macdonald you on this.
Oh, what way?
It's a big hat.
Oh.
That's why it's funny, because it's a big hat. It's funny.
What's that
It's
from?
bigger than a normal hat. Celebrity Jeopardy.
Celebrity Jeopardy
Oh,
on
what it is,
SNL.
Burt Reynolds.
Yes.
Like, even if it's poorly, like this is exactly that time period where they would even make fun of themselves.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Arnold Schwarzenegger on this movie can't pull that off.
No, only Norm could pull that off.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it is interesting psychologically, the concept of like Black Friday, the concept of how we have created a culture in America specifically where we will sometimes kill each other. Like people have died during Black Friday things.
Yeah, the Black Friday has stopped.
People have people have been stampeded to get to stuff.
More than 10 times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this movie, though it's a satire of it, quote unquote, it also encourages it. Where like the part of there's no lesson at the end. Mm-hmm. Is there's no lesson in terms of it was pointless to do all this work for this toy. That also wasn't learned at the end of this, so that kind of undercuts the satire part. But I mean, I guess what are your guys' thoughts about this idea of how this culture that we have in this country of people going absolutely feral on each other in a very uncaring way to get a thing?
I think it is a massive tragedy that parenting and communication could prevent. That so many of these scarcities and rarities are manufactured. For our age group, it would have been Beanie Babies.
Oh my God,
Beanie Babies.
Pulling out the Beanie Baby catalog at recess.
And that we're, I have sitting on my table because my child likes them now, is Pokemon cards. We're just a little too old for that. We're just outside of the range that would have given a crap about Pokemon cards.
Yeah, my younger brother cared about Pokemon.
Right.
Yeah,
Mine
same.
too. Like I didn't care. I was too old.
Same.
I was just too old. I was like, nope, girlfriends. Pokemon cards, no girlfriends. It got simple at that point, at that age, because I think I was 13, right when they really hit.
Okay.
13 or 14, and like by that point I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But kids that were 2 years younger, all about it. But the manufactured scarcities that then they show you commercials about, they still pull that stuff. You could get this super rare version and you could only get it this one. And the only way you'll be cool is if you have the ultra rare version that only like 3 people will get. But that's the way to be cool, is to have the cool thing. Never mind that they're going to release another one in 1 month. And kids even today are not catching on to that and have spent so much of their parents' money on digital nonsense for video games.
Yep. Skins.
Fortnite, yeah.
Yeah, Fortnite.
Minecraft.
Right.
Roblox. Roblox.
So the same stuff is still going on. So we have obviously just not learned from it. The thing that's been different is that manufacturers and businesses have been able to take out the people killing each other by making it digital stuff. The Black Friday sales you can do from your phone. You're not trampling store employees.
Yeah. Now it's like a whole week of cyber sales.
Yeah, it's just cyber sales.
But you still have to sacrifice your sanity, your sleep, your
Money.
and not your money, but for like 3 people, they get the super cool TV at the super cheap price. They're just not killing store employees because news coverage made that bad. So I think there's a lot of broken messaging that deserves to be lampooned, but it's not getting done correctly because we're still overvaluing getting the deal. Which the sad part is Midwesterners will still not even tell you the deal. They'll just tell you we got it on sale.
Yeah, that's true.
When you get the cool thing, we won't even tell you how we got it. So you won't even have a cool story about it. You're just like, oh yeah, I got it on sale. Because it's shameful for me to have a thing that's cooler than everybody else's thing, except that I'm going to display it for you. I just won't tell you how much I paid for it because I'm from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think this is, capitalism, man.
Yep.
This is fucking capitalism. This is what it looks like.
Late
This is
stage.
late stage capitalism where we're looking at things are more important than anything else. And that's how they keep us in our places.
Yeah.
We're focused on the wrong shit, doing the wrong stuff when the real shit is happening that will change our world forever. And it's not a surprise in any way that our country is this way. I think this movie is really bad, but they certainly showed the reality of what everyone is doing when it comes to Christmas and when it comes to any present giving event where people are throwing giant parties for 5-year-olds and all different kinds of stuff that makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Trying to give their kids all the things that they didn't get. And look, in some ways, sure. In other ways, it doesn't fucking matter because kids are going to remember when you didn't fucking show up to the karate thing. They're going to remember when they were looking for you in the crowd. They're going to remember when you never came to any of the games that they had because you always had a meeting on Thursday. Kids are going to remember all that shit. I remember maybe 2 presents that I got. All of my growing up.
Right.
That were like, oh my God, I can't believe I got this present. But it never made it feel like my parents, who didn't give a shit, gave a shit.
Right.
Yeah. And it makes me think about how when I would do like parent groups and stuff, and then there would be the inevitable, like, these kids today are so entitled. And I want to be like, well, who raised them, bro? You know what I mean? They didn't come out of the womb like this.
Or if you let the TV raise them, then they won't know that they have worth beyond what the commercial tells them.
Yeah.
And just to point out as like a side note of something that I learned in grad school, we are the only country who does not have laws about commercials and marketing towards children. We are the only country who does not have that. So not only are we doing something that no one else is doing, but we're also allowing our children to be brainwashed into thinking that this thing that I can buy or that my parents have to get me is the only thing that really matters.
Yeah. And now it's phones and screens of all sorts, like putting them in kids' hands early and often in their faces. And if they're on YouTube, which kids love to be on YouTube, myself included,
Agreed.
There's ads in front of everything. There's ads on the sides of everything. And so these kids are being, I guess, indoctrinated into this idea of like
absolutely true.
needing very specific things, because I don't know, going back to the Guess Jeans story, I don't know if I ever got anything trendy growing up. You know what I mean? I don't know if I got a Cabbage Patch doll when I was a kid, so I guess I did get that. I was pretty little. But I can't remember. I barely had Beanie Babies because my mother was like,
we didn't have any.
No,
Nope.
ma'am.
Nope.
My parents were very frugal. I was raised by accountants. And so they did a good job of actually seeing through frivolity. And they were just like, that's dumb. Not in a mean way. They were just like,
Yeah.
Right. Manufactured
no,
rarity.
Yeah.
we don't care. And spent a lot of time with us. And that's what I remember, right? All the things we did together, not necessarily any of the flashy stuff I got. Because kids get, also because in this hyper capitalistic society, we're moving on to the next very quickly. You know, the attention span is short. And something that I have to work on with clients is how we have really connected with capitalism, connected status and value with stuff, and how you can't ever move backwards. And what I mean by that is, like, if you've moved to a big McMansion, you can't go back to living in a smaller house. Or if you drive like a flashy car, you can't go back to driving like a Honda. You know, and how it really will trap people, kind of in the situation Arnold's in this movie, where they just keep plowing forward to this one thing because they can't just relent and acknowledge this isn't working. This is not we can't keep living like this. We can't keep just like stubbornly going towards this goal. We have to stop and realize what our actual goal is, which is, I think Arnold's goal, Howard's goal is, I want to feel close to my kid, or I want my kid to have a good feeling about me.
I feel like Arnold's or Howard's deal or whatever is that I think he wants his kid to think he's cool.
The status thing, right?
The status thing.
It would be really
I
interesting
think that's
to know
the only
more.
thing I could see.
Which also it sucks, like, why this movie's so lazy. If they would have talked more about the fact that he's obviously an immigrant, because he has the world's thickest accent. Mm-hmm. He's famously not from America, Arnold Schwarzenegger. If they would have even talked about that more, like the American dream, or how he rose to being the mattress king of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And how good that makes him feel. And how he seems to really love those conversations with his customers, right? He's smiling. They can't see his face.
Yeah.
Like, he looks gleeful at that, like, holiday party where he's not even participating. He's working. Mm-hmm. And if this movie would have actually been focused in more on that, of the American dream of it all, and how that's how he felt like he could show his value to his kid, which a lot of parents do. They get hooked. That's why capitalism affects parenting and kids, right? Is kids are always going to want shit. I was always, the second I got my hands on that JCPenney catalog, that Christmas catalog, that weighed 10 pounds.
Oh,
I was
God.
circling the shit out of it.
Oh,
Adelia's
yeah.
catalogs. There was not a catalog in my house growing up that did not have things circled in it
so
that I
triggered
desperately
right now.
wanted.
Yeah.
The
triggered.
American Girl catalog had my hands all over it. I didn't get American Girl doll till I was 13. Too old to appreciate it. No offense, Mom, but appreciate that you got it from me eventually. But that's probably the only trendy thing that actually my parents probably saved up to get me eventually. But this idea that kids are always going to want flashy shit. They're always going to want the things their friends have, the things they see on commercials. That's just how kids' brains work. They just want the shiny thing. And you as an adult, you don't have to get roped into that. You can have lines. And if your kid's disappointed because you didn't get them the thing they wanted, sit in the discomfort of your kid being disappointed. They'll get over it.
Because guess what? In the real fucking world, people get disappointed.
Yeah, they don't get the things that they want.
Or things are just flat too expensive
Yeah.
to be affordable for your situation, that the trade is not worth it.
Yeah.
And that is a necessary message to teach. Like, well, that is the newest, coolest, flashiest thing, but it's not going to make you the coolest, newest, flashiest thing.
Yeah.
And it never will. And it's okay. You know what? You know, it was almost a satirical kids movie that essentially taught this message so much better and now is super relevant because he just got a star.
Macaulay.
Macaulay Culkin just got a star on the Walk of Fame. Richie Rich nailed it.
Yeah.
He's the boy who had everything, and yet all he wanted was friends.
Yeah.
And they didn't make him have friends.
Yeah.
They didn't solve all his problems. They didn't make his family better. It didn't do anything for him except make him realize how much it sucks
Yeah.
to only want those things and try to ascribe your value to this. And this movie missed on whatever satire they tried to create because it was so tonally inconsistent.
Yeah. And you're right, because even in Richie Rich, if I remember correctly, the kids that he wants to play with, the normal kids, they're like, make fun of him for being rich. And they don't want to hang out with him because he's so out of touch and therefore not cool. And yeah, and you're right, that is a much better lesson than what this movie thinks it's trying. I mean, I think this movie was just like, look at these crazy Christmas toy runs that people are like going berserk over. Let's make a movie around that, making fun of it. End of thought process about this movie. And we're going to call it a satire and further embarrass ourselves. I think it's getting, like we were saying, it's getting worse, like the consumer culture, because media is getting more pervasive. Advertising is getting more pervasive. And I think parents are having a harder time sitting with their kids' disappointment.
I think they
yeah.
are.
Yeah.
It's interesting for our generation that went through so much of that. I didn't get whatever cool Beanie Baby was. I didn't have, I don't know, my brother may have gotten a Charizard card eventually, but it wasn't when it was the Charizard card
Right. Yeah.
to
Right.
have, you know, like it
Right.
was.
We
you know,
had
couple
a Game
years
Boy
later.
that we all shared.
Right. I mean, we're in danger of walking into Hannah being able to call us old and tell you you're old. No one cares. It's not a touch like she did in our last episode here. But I think looking at the point of this movie was supposed to be to like tie right to these crazy toy runs. Look how crazy the parents get. Look how out of touch we're going to be. And it just didn't land it. And there were so many things it tried to do where like we can look at how this affects people of different races and how these two dads that have so much, one's a postal worker, one's a mattress executive, and maybe he's from another country, but we'd never know that because Arnold was a killer robot or America's dad from Austria.
Yeah.
That we never talked about.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, like it could have been an interesting juxtaposition of a mailman who's a civil servant who's working on Christmas Eve and trying to get a toy for his kid between deliveries versus a guy who owns his own company who's choosing to neglect his family on Christmas Eve because he continues to neglect his family and has all these resources.
But
and the juxtaposition of that.
It could have been.
Yeah.
And then
But it wasn't.
And it wasn't, but it was also so very 1996 that we couldn't even tell the difference between, okay, so was this like, are they poking fun at that? Are they lampooning this? Is this a satirical representation of, oh, look, the white dad and the black dad who did essentially the same thing, the same level of felony crimes, and one's getting arrested and he's smiling about it. And see, that could have been satirical brilliance. But we couldn't even tell, like, was this on purpose or was this just
No.
the 90s?
Yeah.
I think they just got Sinbad because Sinbad was a hot comedian at the time and Joe Pesci didn't work out. And they didn't even, I don't think they even thought about the racial connotations that we picked up on.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
I'm sure Sinbad did. But
Yeah.
the movie producers...
I mean,
I don't think any
heard
focus
say
group.
Rodney King
That's
when he's
true. He
being
did say Rodney
when he's
King. Oh my
getting
God.
attacked
forgot
by
about
the
that.
group of people. He does say that. So I think he even maybe just in the way that he works in general in terms of how much he improvised, but that even he made a point to point out something that was not being said in the film.
Right. And I think that smile on his face at the end, at that last shot where like he's smiling at Arnold being Turbo Man and like him getting kind of led away by the cops right at that second, not kind of getting led away. Is
Yeah.
I think the twinkle in his eyes, like, to me, was, okay, I'm at least going to make the social commentary here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because Arnold had more direct
didn't.
conflict with that one police officer. Like if anyone was getting arrested, it should have been him.
Yep.
yeah. And even if there was going to be like something of like that officer can't arrest him right now because he was the hero of the whole crowd, could have had him come and arrest him later at his house because he already knew who he was. It wasn't like he was some faceless guy and everyone would have known who this was, and it just was nonsense.
Or like the cop was going to put handcuffs on Arnold. And then everyone was like, Turbo Man. So the cop was like, I guess I can't do it. Logistics.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like that would have worked more.
But it didn't.
I mean,
They
we're
did
working so
none of
hard
that.
over here trying to make this movie. We're really brainstorming though.
We really
Our
are.
remake of Jingle All The Way.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's we'll pause there. We'll go to treatment if we have any.
Sure.
All right. So Hannah would like to go first with the turbo treatment of the Turbo Man family.
So, as always, we don't have enough information to really say what this would be like, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I would treat Howard and Liz as a couple because I think that there's some pretty significant, even though, as we've discussed, the wife character is very clearly very, very poorly written and makes no sense at all. That if I think about kind of going back to our brainstorming of like what I think we were shown in this film, which is how disconnected they really seem as a couple. Whether or not that was intentional, I don't know. But they are very disconnected, and they definitely have been together for a good amount of years. I would even guess anywhere between 10 to 15 years that they had been together. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I've never really talked about, because me and Gottman don't really vibe for the most part, and I can talk about that for 100 years, but I won't do it here. There's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And I think some of the things that we saw and some of the things that I picked up as a couples therapist in the film were criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. I really think that those things, I don't think we saw a good example of those things in this film, but I do think some of the ways that they were reacting around each other, the wife being very disconnected from him, not really being able to pick up on any of his emotionality in any way, or even really make guesses of what he was like. She was so checked out in such a specific way. And I think that happens a lot when you have a partner who is always promising shit that they're not fucking doing. And eventually you just don't really give a shit what they're doing because they're not being honest about it. And maybe it doesn't feel like a big enough thing where you can't be with them anymore, but it certainly isn't a big enough wedge in a marriage that would make it really hard to be connected and for them to be able to be the supportive parents that Jamie really needs. And so I think what I would want to do is help them be able to communicate better, but also really show the harm that Howard is doing by continuing this pattern of behavior that's affecting his entire family.
Yeah.
On a regular fucking basis. Not only helping Liz have a voice in the relationship, but also really showing to someone who has no awareness, Howard's character, really showing him the effects that his behavior have on other people and how sometimes that's a part of the work that we do with couples of helping them see you may have this whole narrative in your head about what you think this is, and you're wrong about that.
So wrong.
This is having a big impact, not only on your marriage, but also on your relationship just as a human with your wife and with your child. And if it keeps going the way that it's going, it's not going to end well. And so I would really want to help them. I feel like there would be criticism. I feel like there is defensiveness, especially with Howard's character. As we can tell, he can't really manage anybody being mad at him or frustrated with him. I think there is some stonewalling just based on her lack of response to him, like her just being really checked out of the marriage. And so I feel like that's what I would want to do is kind of help point out the things that aren't willing to look in the face at. And also give the wife a voice in terms of how the behavior is affecting her and her son.
Well said. I think I'll go this time and we'll let Brittany close this one out. I would absolutely want to work with the wife. I think of the people that I see besides the child that are the most victimized in this relationship, as like Hannah said, is watching her struggle. As if she were a three-dimensional character and a real person, we would be seeing a little bit more of how put in between the lies and the failures and the overlove of business and image that Howard is doing, and how much anger and resentment and frustration she would have and need empowerment and need a place to be able to have someone reflectively listen to her and allow these underlying emotions that she probably has to dissociate away from to keep a mask on for her child, or at least she's going to think she does, especially in the 90s. But looking at what I think someone in that kind of situation is going to need is permission to feel all of their feelings, including the anger ones and the trapped ones, because we don't know what she does. We have no idea what she does for work or not. If she works.
Yeah.
Not a clue.
Yeah.
I don't think it's mentioned at all.
Definitely not.
I'm assuming she's a housewife.
Same.
Take a wild guess.
I mean, it's possible, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Or teacher, or who knows? It's the 90s. So, women were restricted to about 2 roles on TV between housewife and teacher or nurse. So who knows what she would have been. But looking at what a real person would need in this situation is a very non-judgmental place to explore all of those feelings, including up to choosing to stay in the situation but be better armored against it because for whatever reason it's not financially or otherwise possible to leave at this second. And how do we empower the client to feel like even in a situation they may be stuck in some sense of the word, they don't have to be stuck in all, which can be a significant boon to health. And I think that is something I would want to do with this family, let alone the ridiculous trauma that would process later, knowing that I just watched my idiot husband, who does not know how to operate a jetpack to save my child who could have been a street pizza. because that is how you get a dead husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Rita is really missing is one good girlfriend
Yeah.
who's like, you realize this is crazy, right? Mm-hmm. What he's done?
Wait, you mean you can't trust a man who wants to sleep with you to provide you that?
Well, honestly, he'd probably be doing the same thing. I can't believe he did that. Put your child in danger like that? I would never put your child in danger like that. Ever. Lizzie.
Yeah.
I mean, he would do that, but he would be on his own agenda, which would invalidate the argument for her.
Yeah.
Which she was intelligent enough to see through quickly, which was good moment of
at the end of the film.
And he really had to smack her in the face with it.
Yeah.
He did.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But that's where I would go with treatment. Brittany?
Who can say? I mean, I'm the kid therapist, so I would think, well, here's the problem with a kid like Jamie. He doesn't have, the problem is his dad. You know, putting him in therapy is kind of moot at that age, at least, because he's right. I mean, it would be just validation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right to be upset. Yeah, that is upsetting that your dad doesn't do that or the other. Mm-hmm. He would be a kid, let's say, they put him in, maybe he was I don't know, something was going on and they put him in therapy because his dad's disappointing him. It would be hard to work with him other than having a space where he could talk without bringing the dad in. Mm-hmm. I think at a certain point I'd have to be I need to see this dad and work with him and do parent coaching and then pull the mom in too, if they're still together, and kind of be what is this dynamic? What are our goals? Why are you working so much? You know, like you were talking about way earlier, Ben, just drilling down on consistency, that how are we showing up in the kids' day-to-day life? What are some hard expectations we can have on, you're going to get home for dinner 4 times a week at least? You know, what are the big things we can't not go to? I feel like Howard would need a lot of psycho ed from me about why it actually is important.
Yes.
That he does the things that I'm asking him to do. But honestly, I don't have much for treatment because everything's actually fine at the end of the movie. And the kid's fine, and the relationship's fine, and the kid has the joy of Christmas in him and the generosity of Christmas. And what actually would be the fallout is I don't think the dad learned anything. So I feel like the same situation is going to keep happening.
Oh, they made it clear in the post-credit scene that it's going to.
Ugh, bummer. Also, if any movie deserved a post-credit scene less. Anyway.
Yeah.
So what would happen is they probably would have maybe go to family therapy at some point when the kid's older because he wants something to do with his dad. And his dad's I don't understand why we don't have a relationship. Mm-hmm. And Lizzie would be pulling his ass into family therapy. And then I would probably end up just wanting to talk to Arnold because the kid's not the problem. Right?
Yeah.
It makes me think of when people do want to do therapy with their teenagers because the teenagers don't want to have a relationship with them. And they want family therapy they want someone like me to just make their kid have a relationship with them. And what I tell parents, and I don't think they really know this before they sign up with me, is if your kid's not invested in your relationship, I'm not going to make them do family therapy because you want me to put a Band-Aid on a problem you caused. In family therapy, even with one of them's a teenager, everyone has to be invested in the work. And I'm not going to make a kid who has tuned out of the relationship with their parent come to family therapy once a week because their parent feels the type of way.
I agree.
If the kid's not genuinely invested. And I've had situations not even that long ago where I've had kids where they're I don't really care about working on our relationship. I know who my dad is.
Yeah.
And I'm fine because they have a problem they need to figure out. Mm-hmm. And then I have to very discreetly, because protecting the kids, have discretion with what the kids share with me, just kind of say to the parent, hey, as of right now, what I'm getting from your kid is that they're not super motivated to do the work right now. Mm-hmm. And that's my job, is to assess everyone's motivation to do collaborative therapy, whether that's couples or family, and that they're not there. And there's no pressing issue going on right now, behaviorally, mental health wise, that I feel like you have to do this work. Because in those situations, usually the kids are in their own individual therapy or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm let them, they're stable. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to do this work, then they don't have to do this work because they are not a big fan of you right now. Or they don't want to spend time with you. Or they don't want to go to your house. Mm-hmm. They want to stay at the other parent's house. And I do tell parents, though, I'll keep working with you if you want. I'll do parent coaching with you. I'll do family therapy without the kid with you. That we can figure out what's going on your end that's created this dynamic. But I'm not going to force a kid to sit down and do that work, especially if the parent isn't ready to do repair work, which is apologizing, whether the intent was in there, recognizing the impact. And then part of repair work is what you talked about earlier, I think, Hannah, is behavior change. I recognize what I did that hurt you. Whether I meant for it to hurt you or not is moot. I apologize. I validate you. And this is what I'm going to do differently. And that's something I sometimes will do with parents without the kid in the room. Like, this is how you do repair work. And you can do that with me or without me. So that's what I would do with treatment, with the crumbs this movie gave me about that.
Wait, you mean the darkness in his look when Dad walked in and put that purple belt on his head? And
that's a memory that kid's going to bring up in therapy
Forever.
15 years later.
that's the kind of darkness in a look that's enough to get you cast as Anakin Skywalker.
I mean, I'm surprised it took you this long to bring him up.
Same.
Yeah.
Wait till final thoughts, which we'll get to in a bit here. So we'll take our last break and get into final thoughts, which I feel like we've shared profusely anyway. So there shouldn't be any mysteries, but
This movie sucks.
Yeah.
we'll take a break here. All right, final thoughts. I feel like we're going to be a roulette. Maybe for once we can all say the same thing at the same time. This movie sucks.
We are never going
Ever.
to see this movie again. Maybe Ben, because you got kids.
Nope. My kid preferred the Santa Claus sequels to this one.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because even those were focused on a
Kids.
kid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Christmas and elves and
Yeah.
razzle dazzle.
Something. Well, Santa Claus 2 was hot garbage. But
Yeah.
well, anyway, it's a different movie. But final thoughts wise, I'll just start here because this is my fault. Because my child self remembered this movie as being fun, and my adult self watched this and went, wow.
Yeah.
Like, this is so tonally bad. I don't even know if it's satirically showing like racism in Hollywood and bad dadding and people not getting it and no lessons being taught, or if it's just a really poorly written 90s movie that had all the 90s tropes of all those things just being true that have now gotten so obvious in media that I'm seeing it that way. And I think it's more that. I don't think it was satirically shown that as Turbo Man, as Arnold, goes flying through a family's window who's obviously having a very nice family Thanksgiving. Yet another opportunity to have a really satirical moment. But we just had to have that be a black family.
Yeah.
Because 90s, I think.
Yeah.
We just need to insert color into this movie. So we'll let them be this like throwaway family that get their home literally destroyed
Obliterated
by Arnold
on Christmas Eve.
as a one-off note.
Yeah.
in a jetpack.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like, just like we can't even tell if it's making fun of that. And I think I've reached a conclusion that it's not. But like, this movie went through so many different cycles. Like, I think it's just obvious it went through rewrite after rewrite, and they just threw a bunch of shit together.
Yeah.
Because
Sloppy.
it was sloppy, and it went from like, oh, we could have a real commentary on consumerism and the impact of families, or we could have a movie where we turn Arnold into Batman, where he suddenly discovers a crime, and rich guy in a coat goes in and deals with the henchmen at first, but then finds the real Batman villains, and somehow we get an
can't
entire
believe-
scene
This is the-
where he's battling criminal underworld Santas,
That did happen.
and he's beating them up with a candy cane.
I mean, if this movie's anything, it is a declaration about white privilege and the fact that he just convinces those guys he's an undercover cop and walks out.
With a fake badge.
That probably looks so made of aluminum.
I mean, it was plastic.
It was
Yeah.
plastic. It was fucking plastic.
But I mean,
It
like,
was so,
so
plastic
obviously
you
fake.
needed like Omri from the Indian in the cupboard to say plastic. Like, it was that bad. Like, and it was, I'm just going to stick with the 90s here. For some reason, we hired Jim Belushi to show up
Yeah.
and do Jim Belushi things. And then to make it more ridiculous, why not have, in addition to Arnold beat up a bunch of Santas, he's also going to battle Paul White, a.k.a. The Big Show, who is then at some point going to punch Vern Troyer across a room.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go back to it being a movie where Phil Hartman is hitting on housewives. And then this kid's going to be really angry that his dad's not there. And what movie are we watching where it's in like, oh, look at this. We're going to have Sinbad and Arnold have a battle of wits, which Arnold is very clearly losing, but also he looks normal sized next to Sinbad, so we'll cast Sinbad to be funny. And also a little bit. What happened in this movie? It was bad. It was bad. It should not continue to exist. It should not be ranked 100 on the list of greatest Christmas movies ever. It should not be ranked at all. It's trash. I'm sorry. I'm done. End of speech. Ron Swanson.
Well, where I can give you some cred, Ben, or just some slack, is I also watched this movie when it first came out. I'm sure it was a family favorite in my household because Arnold Schwarzenegger was in it. And, you know, he was just, every kid loved him in movies growing up. And so I remembered it being cheesy, but I thought it would just be like 90s kid movie cheesy in a way that I could tolerate, you know?
Right.
So it was shocking.
Right. Oh, right. Wait.
From the jump, how poorly. If this was the first and only thing I ever saw Arnold Schwarzenegger in, I would be like, this man was a movie star. No charisma, horrible acting, no comic timing, sort of a good grip on his physicality. That's about it. This movie feels like a cash grab. It also feels like sometimes when movies try to be family friendly, therefore like something for everybody, it becomes like this. Like like a shitty soup where you've thrown everything in from the refrigerator, but it doesn't make sense together. Because like my favorite parts of this movie were the Ted parts because it was so weird, so different tonally than the rest of the movie, so horny in a very specific way, sleazy. His energy so nefarious. He's actually like a good actor and a good comedic. Like he could hold on to actually his like acting in it. And he was bringing this level where I was like, can we just follow Ted around into his lair?
Dear Phil
Like I
Hartman.
was starting to write these like fanfics about Ted. Like what's he up to? Like I want to follow his weird, like him like yelling at the kids when Rita went up to shower. Like he was the most interesting part of this whole movie. And that's about it. But I think it's like that thing where like sometimes I think movies, like I said, try too hard to have like the things that the adults will like and the things that the kids will like. And this movie is bad at both. And yeah, it's a horrible, I will never watch this movie again. I'm going to do I'm going to work very hard to keep this movie from my nieces and nephews so that they don't end up accidentally liking it and then making me watch it on Christmas. Like I'm going to hide this movie from the eyes of all the children around me because I never want to see it again. And that's how I feel about this movie. Hannah?
This movie sucked and I hated it and I was bored.
Yep.
And I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is the worst actor on the face of the planet. I've always thought that and will always think that. And this movie really shows that.
Yeah.
And it sucked and I will never watch it again.
So I think what we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that rather than watch this movie ever again, we're going to go try to pick fist fights with reindeer.
Jingle All The Way to Hell is what this movie should be called. Go fuck right off.
Exactly.
Also, the fact that that's where you went with the Batman reference and not a Mr. Freeze joke.
I can't
Wow, Ben.
believe
Wow,
that was
Ben.
also
Wow,
your
Ben.
lamest Batman connection
yeah.
I have ever heard you do.
So
We're not. That's not a zero. Like a you didn't.
And
like you didn't hit the
also,
landing with that.
I'm mad that you made me watch this movie and made me wait 2 years to schedule it.
all right, everybody, chill. And on that note, please rate and review us on any other episode but this one.
Or maybe you know what? Actually, if you also hate Jingle All The Way, hit us up. You know, this is interesting because actually we can do a little preview. Our next episode is actually going to have a similar theme, where this hyper consumerism, this capitalism, is so awful that it causes the impetus for the non-Christmas celebration we'll be discussing in our next episode, Festivus. As I rained blows upon him, I realized there must be another way. Yeah. So on that note, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Popcorn Psychology. You can find us on Twitter/X at popcorn_psych. You can email us at popcornpsychology@gmail.com. If you would like to be a patron, you can find the link for our Patreon website on our Instagram bio. If you're a $10 or more patron, you get access to early unedited episodes. If you're a $50 or more patron, you get to choose the topic of an episode we do. Like Ben was saying, please review and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the best and most effective way for new listeners to find us, and we really appreciate it. Jingle all the way, y'all.